get a Super Bowl out of me. Believe that. Believe that.
Yo, what is going on, guys? We are back for the second week of the Everything Ravens podcast. My name is Logan. I'm the host of this podcast. I run the Instagram account at everything_Ravens, which is the biggest Instagram Ravens community, sitting at 37,000 followers. Make sure you follow that account, as well as follow the other account at Everything Ravens Podcast for all the info on this podcast. This podcast will be available on SoundCloud, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. So now let's introduce our co-host. How are you guys doing today?
Hey, it's Kyrie. I'm doing pretty good. Just ready to talk some Ravens football.
Hey, it's Brooks. Excited to be back. Ready to go over some of these questions with you guys.
Yeah, so today, if you guys didn't know, we're doing mailbag for this week's episode. The schedule doesn't come out till next week, so we're going to wait on that one. This is just a simple podcast, just a mailbag to get it going. Let's get into the first question for today's podcast. This question comes from at Joey Vopravel on Instagram. His question is, with defensive coordinators in the league having a year to prep, how does the offense stay fresh?
I think the big thing for the Ravens and the offense is going to be utilizing the running backs. I know Eric DeCosta came out and said, hey, we're going to try to use all four of these guys. I think that's the key. That's the blueprint. The Ravens changed the league last year running the football. Why change that now? If it's not broke, don't fix it. Keep the momentum going. Utilize it for running back, come up with different, creative running schemes, and you still utilize Lamar Jackson in a big way. I think that's going to be key. Keep it fresh, because you're not going to know what the Ravens are going to do, who's going to run the ball, who's going to have the ball in their hands. I think that's going to keep defensive players guessing, and it's going to keep the offense very innovative.
Oh, I agree. In my opinion, with our offense, the bread and butter of this offense is to run the ball and throw to the tight ends. And fans complain about Lamar throwing to tight ends here and there. Mark Andrews was our number one receiver last year at tight end. And like you said, if it isn't broke, don't fix it. And I think the thing last year is Lamar Jackson, he didn't just have a good season with Mark Andrews as his number one target. He won the MVP unanimously. And with Mark Andrews as his number one target, that's not going to change, and they're still going to run the ball as long as Greg Roman's offensive coordinator.
Yeah, I think Greg Roman did a phenomenal job last year, and it'll be interesting to see what he comes up with this year. I think you have to adapt and change a little bit just because the league catches on so fast. You saw Cam Newton, Matt Ryan, two former MVPs. They weren't really ever able to reproduce those same numbers from their MVP seasons. And then I think the best example is Colin Kaepernick when he took his team to the Super Bowl. People really were saying that he reinvented the wheel with the pistol offense. That fizzled out quickly. I still think we're going to run the ball. I think all the depth we have at the running back position is going to help a lot there. There's some talk about Lamar's amount of carries being cut down. There was talk about that going into last season. It didn't really come into fruition. I think he'll continue to have a heavy dose of carries in the run game. I think they'll continue to try to design plays to have him avoid big hits. I think we'll see a couple more 5 wide receiver spread sets. I thought Lamar did a great job with that last year, and it gave Mark Andrews a lot of favorable one-on-one matchups over the middle. With the additions at wide receiver and Duvernay and Prochet, those sets will be great. They'll run down the seam and burn down the field, opening up space for Andrews and Hollywood and Snead to fill over the middle.
Yeah, I think the Ravens are still going to run the ball quite a bit. I mean, we have 4 running backs, and they like them all a lot. They all kind of have different skill sets, and the Ravens are going to use each and every one of them.
My main concern is I hope the Ravens don't do what they did with Joe Flacco after they gave him the big contract. We won the Super Bowl. They try to put the offense in Joe Flacco's hand, try to become this pass-heavy offense. Lamar Jackson can throw the ball. I feel like he's going to even develop better as a thrower this year. But don't make this a pass-first offense. Don't try to put too much pressure on Lamar Jackson. Stick to running the football, because we saw in the past when Ravens wanted to go pass-heavy, it didn't work out.
Alrighty, so next question comes from at Jacob Carlson 88 on Instagram, and he asked, who do you think will be the Ravens' biggest competition in the division and why?
I definitely think the Cleveland Browns. One, because I was a huge fan of Baker Mayfield. Now, I have a little bias. I am an Oklahoma Sooners fan, but I love Baker Mayfield. I watch all his games at Oklahoma. This guy, to me, was the best quarterback in that class. He had a great rookie year. Second year, he took a bit of a sophomore slump. I believe that has a lot to do with the head coaching with Freddie Kitchens. He got a new head coach, new system coming into place. You still got Odell Beckham. I feel like they can still fix that relationship on the field. You got Jarvis Landry. They addressed the offensive line problems they had this offseason in the draft with signing Coughlin from Tennessee and then addressing that draft too, their first round pick, I believe. And then you still got all those weapons. The defense is pretty good. Myles Garrett will be back. I feel like the Browns, and also, mind you, they did beat the Ravens this past season. So the Browns, to me, is going to be a big threat in that division. Pittsburgh, I just feel like Big Ben, I have to see it to believe it. This guy's going to be late in his 30s now. Is he going to be really 100% healthy? How's that offense going to really look? The defense was great, but I'm more fearful of the Browns and that complete total roster than a Pittsburgh Steelers with an aging Big Ben.
Yeah, this is a great question. The Browns certainly addressed some issues this offseason, and Baker did regress his second year, and I think he'll bounce back. But until Cleveland proves that they can put it all together, I'm not giving them any credit. There was a lot of hype surrounding them last season, and that died out immediately. Bengals obviously had a big offseason bringing aboard Joe Burrow, but I think they're a few years away. To me, the biggest threat in the division is Pittsburgh. Steelers had a lethal defense last year, and it almost carried their offense into the playoffs. Like, under the new playoff rules, they would have gotten the 7th seed. Their defense was first in the league last season in sacks and takeaways, and they were 5-3 at home, with all 3 losses being one possession of playoff teams: Seattle, Baltimore, and Buffalo. You know, that defense gave Lamar his worst game of the season. He threw 3 interceptions, and his longest rush was only 9 yards. We were bailed out of that game by Marlon Humphrey, who saved the day in overtime. Both Big Ben and James Conner will return from injury. I know Ben is 38, but to me, he's potentially a candidate for comeback player of the year. They added a lot of weapons to that offense. They brought aboard Eric Ebron. They drafted Charles Claypool. Deontay Johnson will continue to improve, and then they still have Juju Smith-Schuster. I'm not saying this team's in line to take over the division, but I think that offense, if it can stay healthy, can do enough to take some of the pressure off that defense and win some football games.
Oh, I agree. And I think you really have to take culture into effect here. I think the Browns clearly have a more talented roster than Pittsburgh, but the Browns just aren't known for winning. And I think the Steelers, as long as their coaching staff regime and that culture is in play, they're always going to compete. The Browns have never had a winning culture. You saw last year, they had one of the most talented rosters in the league and couldn't quite put it together.
Definitely. And as much as it pains me to say this, Mike Tomlin did a great job with that team last year and was in line for Coach of the Year until John Harbaugh just completely reinvented our offense and did a great job with our roster.
Alrighty, next question comes from @Parker_Dinsdale_06. Which rookies do you believe have the highest ceiling?
Well, I outlined this in last week's pod. I absolutely love J.K. Dobbins. If you look at Ezekiel Elliott's last season at Ohio State and compare it side by side with Dobbins, it's uncanny, with Dobbins actually getting the slight edge. And they were taking 51 picks apart, which is an absolute steal to me. He had over 2,000 yards rushing, 6.7 yards per carry. We highlighted him in the last pod. He plays with a burst. He hits the hole hard, great vision. He'll sit behind Mark Ingram and be a great number 2 this year. But when you look at high ceiling, to me, you have to talk about fit. How high can this player go in this system? He matches our running game and what we're trying to build perfectly. He played in a similar system in Ohio State with Justin Fields, and he absolutely shined. He's only 21 years old. I'm excited to see what he can do on the field his rookie year. We've seen rookie running backs come in and make instant impacts, but he will take over this backfield soon, and he'll be a great complimentary back this year.
Yeah, I have to go with the first round pick and Patrick Queen. I just believe, listen, he had 1 full year to be a starter. He's going to continue to grow, continue to get better. And one thing I love about Queen the most was he got better late in the stretch. He played in big time football and big time games. Look at the national championship game. This guy's a baller. He has great instincts you just can't teach. I feel like with the culture that we have as a defensive team, the coaching staff we got in place, defense coordinator Wink Martindale, I think this is going to be a great fit. He's going to learn a lot. I feel like he's going to gradually progress throughout the season, and he's going to be a big time player, big time day one starter for us. Like I said, he just has those instincts you just can't teach.
Yeah, I kind of agree with the Patrick Queen. One thing about Patrick Queen is he's only 20 years old. And when he's 20 years old and has the football IQ and instincts that he already has, that's just something to build upon. Ed Reed, when he came into the league, he was known for just being ridiculously football smart. And that's kind of what Patrick Queen is. Now, Patrick Queen is a bit undersized. And like I reiterated in the last podcast, he's going to have time to put on that size. And when he puts on that size, along with his IQ, just learning this defense in the Wink Martindale system, he's going to be really good.
Yeah, and this isn't to knock any of our other picks, but it's more looking at the Ravens historically, what they've been able to do at the middle linebacker position, drafting linebackers early and turning them into superstars, and then at the running back position as well, what we're currently doing with our offense and what we've been able to do in the past, drafting running backs in similar positions.
Yeah, and another rookie that I think has a high ceiling is Justin Madubuike, the defensive tackle he took at pick 71. Like I said in the last podcast as well, he's just a size speed guy. He ran a 5'8", 340. He had 31 bench press reps. He can win with size, speed, leverage, all those things you want. And I said his biggest concern was consistency. He takes plays off. He doesn't show the same effort on every play, but once he gets those few kinks worked out, I feel like he has a super high ceiling. He's a guy that I think has Geno Atkins potential just with the way he can win in the pass rushing game. Alrighty, so the next question comes from @Chavo_4 on Instagram. He asked, who is the biggest AFC threat for the Ravens besides the Kansas City Chiefs?
I'm definitely going to have to go with the Buffalo Bills. Look, the Ravens faced the Bills last year. It was 24-17. It was a close game, defensive game. That to me, that was one of the toughest games I had to watch as a Ravens fan last season. Listen, Buffalo got better. They got Stephon Diggs. I thought he's going to be a big time change for Josh Allen. I love Josh Allen coming out of the draft because of his big arm. I mean, he reminds me a little bit of Joe Flacco, just way more mobile. So you got counting that, but also too the defense. This is one of the best defenses in the league last year. I feel like they're going to get even better with the head coach Sean McDermott. I just feel like just too many things falling in place with Buffalo and the big guy, the GOAT, Tom Brady. He left the division. He's gone. His reign of terror is over. That division is wide open for him. I believe they're going to win the division and could possibly see the Baltimore Ravens in the playoffs. I'm worried about the Buffalo Bills. If they're not Kansas City, Buffalo Bills are going to be a huge threat for them.
Yeah, I agree with Kyrie. I think the Bills are poised for a big season. I think everything fell into place this offseason for them. You know, they have one of the toughest stadiums to play in, one of the best home field advantages led by that Bills Mafia and just that tough weather to play in. And yet they actually had a better record on the road last season than they did at home. Part of that was because of schedule, but it also shows that they're ready to go into opponents' home stadiums and take them down. I think they see themselves as 1 year behind the Ravens. They went into Houston last year, and to me, Josh Allen, after that first quarter, looked totally overwhelmed. He made some dumb mistakes, some poor decision making. He had that crazy lateral late in the game where he was trying to make a play, and it just didn't work out. They only managed 6 points in the entire second half and overtime. It reminded me of the Ravens-Chargers games from Lamar's rookie year. I think second time around, they'll be much more settled, ready, get those first playoff game jitters out of the way. Like Kyrie said, they added Stephon Diggs. They retained John Brown and Cole Beasley. They added Zach Moss, another talented running back, to the backfield with Devin Singletary. They surrounded Josh Allen with talent. Third year is kind of a make-or-break year for quarterbacks. I think he's ready to take a big step. And then Brady out of the way in that division. I think they feel for the first time in 2 decades that it's their division to lose. I think that will spark something within that locker room, get them going more motivated for this season.
Yeah, and one underrated team that people aren't talking about as a huge threat in the AFC is the Indianapolis Colts. I think they can definitely be a threat. They signed Philip Rivers this offseason, one of the most experienced, savvy veteran quarterbacks in this league. They had a good draft for their offense to put weapons around them. They drafted Jonathan Taylor from Wisconsin. They drafted Michael Pittman Jr., who everyone knows was one of my favorite prospects in the draft period, both in the second round. They still retain T.Y. Hilton. They still retain Jack Doyle. They have a great offensive line, and they're very well coached by Frank Reich. And I think that defense for the Colts is very underrated as well. So I will not count out the Indianapolis Colts as a potential threat to the Ravens.
Yeah, and one thing to note with the Colts is Frank Reich has a previous relationship with Philip Rivers. In fact, Philip Rivers had his best statistical year under Frank Reich's coaching. I think that's a great duo. They have the weapons around him. That division, I think Houston kind of self-imploded. We'll see if Tennessee can duplicate the same numbers they did last year, get that same mojo going. I think it's up for grabs. Philip Rivers, the veteran quarterback in that division with a bunch of young guys. We'll see if he can take over.
Another team I think could low-key be a threat for the Ravens is the Los Angeles Chargers. I think with them, it really comes down to their quarterback competition, because we all know the Chargers have one of the most talented rosters in the league. That defense is loaded with Joey Bosa, Melvin Ingram, Casey Hayward, Desmond King, Derwin James, and now drafting Kenneth Murray. That's a very, very scary defense. And if they can get their quarterback position figured out, either it's Tyrod Taylor or Justin Herbert, they have the weapons. They have Austin Eckler. They have Keenan Allen. They have Hunter Henry. They have Mike Williams. Their offensive line is kind of shaky, but I think the Chargers are a team that can definitely be a dark horse if they can figure out their quarterback situation.
Yeah, I think the Chargers have a great roster. My questions with them: Melvin Gordon left. Can Austin Eckler take that 3-down running back role and take enough pressure off his rookie quarterback? Or if they go with Tyrod, help enough there to get that offense going? And then also, they have virtually no fan base. They say, their own players say, their home stadium feels like road games. They've had to go to silent counts in their home stadium. If they're able to create enough excitement in LA with Justin Herbert to get fans in the stadium, give them a little home field advantage back, I think they could be a threat, because they definitely have the talent on both sides of the ball.
I feel the Chargers will be a threat if Justin Herbert eventually starts. I'm just not a fan of Tyrod Taylor. Wasn't a big fan when he was a Baltimore Raven. Went to Cleveland, wasn't a big fan. Just every time he gets in the field, he's kind of a game manager quarterback to me. He can make some throws here and there. He's mobile a little bit. He just doesn't really spark me as a big game changing quarterback. You put Justin Herbert in there, who I thought was one of the best QB prospects in this draft. He got the weapons. The offensive line is a big concern to me for the Chargers. That defense is ferocious. So they go in the right direction with the quarterback and they start Justin Herbert maybe a little bit earlier than they might want to. I feel like they can be a dangerous team, but they try to keep this Tyrod Taylor thing going for like 4, 5, 6 games. I feel like they're going to fall flat on their faces.
Oh, yeah, and another thing, too, is you can never count out New England Patriots. Like, they may have lost Tom Brady, but they still have a winning culture. They still have Bill Belichick as coach. They still have that great defense. It really depends on how Jarrett Stidham, Brian Hoyer, whoever their quarterback ends up being does. But I think the Patriots will always be a threat just due to their culture, kind of like Pittsburgh in a way.
Without a doubt. Teams have counted out the Patriots in years past. When Brady got hurt and Matt Castle stepped in, he led them to the playoffs. When Brady was suspended, Jimmy Garoppolo and Jacoby Brissett took over, shared quarterback role there. They went 3-1 combined together. Belichick has a way of developing quarterbacks and bringing them into an already winning culture and allowing them to succeed. You can never count them out, especially going into the season. I'll have to see it with my own eyes before I say the Patriots are not contenders.
I agree. I actually liked the Jarrett Stidham back at Auburn. He was actually one of the top recruits when he's recruited Baylor. I actually like Jarrett Stidham. I know his last year at Auburn wasn't that quite impressive, but to me, he would have been one of the best QBs if he was in this year's draft. So I feel like the Patriots staying pat and not drafting a quarterback actually worked to their benefit. I feel like Belichick and Josh McDaniels can coach this guy up. They can win some games, but I'm with you. I'm going to have to kind of wait and see how it all plays out.
Alrighty, so the next question comes from @_Evan Potts on Instagram, and he asks, "What are your predictions for the bubble players at key positions? Who do you think will and won't make the roster?"
It's one of the best problems to have as an NFL team is just an incredible amount of depth, but you can't keep everyone. I look at our wide receiver room. I think it's really crowded. I think there's going to be a bunch of guys there fighting for spots come preseason. DeAnthony Thomas is one guy I think is definitely a bubble player. I don't think he did enough in the return game to solidify a returning spot this year. Prochet comes into the team. He did some returning at SMU. If they feel that he can take over that role and be an impact player on offense, I think Thomas might be gone. And then you have to look at our signings right now. Anyone who comes in to the organization is still on the free agent market right now, typically comes with some baggage. Jake Ryan, DJ Fluker, Pernell McPhee, all guys kind of signed late, right before the draft. Fluker, 4 teams in the last 5 years. He's clearly bouncing around the league for a reason, known as a little bit of a locker room trouble. Obviously, the Ravens have some questions up front. If they feel the rookies can step in and fill that void, Fluker is definitely on the bubble. And then McPhee and Ryan come into a linebacker core with a lot of movement. It's been a lot of shifting around this offseason. McPhee's more of a veteran presence, but he's coming off an injury, and I didn't see too much of a diminish in the Ravens' pass rush when he went down last year. Bowser and Ferguson filled that role as kind of a combo duo together. And then Ryan comes in, signed actually right before the draft. Then we draft 2 inside linebackers. We brought back LJ Fort. We'll see if he's able to make the roster in what is now an actually crowded inside linebacker room.
Yeah, I look at the wide receiver room as our biggest bubble position room per se. Hollywood Brown, Miles Boygan, I think, are 100% locks to make this team, as well as Devin Duvernay. Willie Snead and James Prochet, I would say, are 90% locks to make this team. I don't think they're 100% guaranteed, but I feel like they have a very strong chance, and it's more likely than not they make the roster with Willie Snead being the veteran and James Prochet, the Ravens trading up for him in the 6th round. I look at that wide receiver 6 position. If the Ravens do end up keeping 6 wide receivers, players on the bubble there: Antoine Wesley, who is an undrafted rookie from last year; Jaleel Scott, who was a 4th round pick a few years ago; DeAnthony Thomas and Chris Moore, who are 2 of the Ravens' key special teamers last year. I think I look at that spot, as well as the linebacker core, like you said. I look at those inside linebackers outside Malik Harrison, Patrick Queen, and LJ Fort. I look at Jake Ryan, Otaro Laka, and Chris Board as guys who are on the bubble kind of there.
Yeah, I took a look at safety. I mean, just you got Chuck Clark, got obviously Earl Thomas, Anthony Levine, and now a 7th round pick, Geno Stone. The big bubble guy for me is Deshaun Eller, who he drafted in the 6th round back in 2018 from Texas. He had a broken form his rookie year. He missed the rest. He had an injury this past season. I believe it was a knee injury. He missed the remainder of the season. This guy just keeps getting injured. We got Geno Stone now in the mix. I just feel like injury is a big concern for him. He hasn't really shown enough. He hasn't really had a chance to show enough on the field. And I just feel like now with the depth at safety, he might be on the outside looking in very soon.
So let me ask you guys this. Out of like the wide receiver, linebacker, bubble players, which guy do you guys think makes the roster?
I think Chris Moore. I think Chris Moore leans in just because what he's able to do on special teams. I think he's a leader in that room. And if you look, John Harbaugh's roots are in special teams. He recognizes the hustle. He recognizes the ability to make plays there. And special teams is a game breaker. You know, when we're winning in games, if someone can take a kick return or a punt return and flip the field and switch momentum around, that's a big difference. Chris Moore does a great job getting down the field, punt coverage, kick coverage. I think he makes the team there. And he's a veteran in that room. That special teams unit shuffles around a lot. He provides some leadership as well as Anthony Levine. I think those two make the roster.
Yeah, I have to agree with you for the most part. One player that I actually want to talk about who we actually just signed was Jake Ryan. I feel like the moment we signed Jake Ryan he was just going to be a training camp body. I feel like that linebacker group is pretty tight with LJ Ford, Patrick Crane, Chris Board. I just feel like Jake Ryan, he's going to be a training camp body. He's an extra body for training camp. And by the time regular season comes around, he's going to be a final day cut.
Yeah, for me at wide receiver bubble, you guys obviously said Chris Moore. I think he can make the team due to his special team ability. But another guy I look at is Antoine Wesley, which was an undrafted free agent from last year. The Ravens liked him a lot. He was making plays all throughout last training camp. And Anthony Levine even commented on one of my posts that 84 is going to ball out, which is Antoine Wesley's number. But there were so many other veteran defensive backs on the team last year that were telling the coaches how impressed they were with that undrafted rookie Antoine Wesley. And I think if he can have another solid camp, another solid preseason, I think he's really someone to watch out for to make the roster. And as for the inside linebacker spot, if I had to put money on someone, I honestly think it'll be Otaro Laka, who was another guy that really impressed last year during training camp. He ended up not being able to play due to a hamstring injury that got him placed on IR. But I feel like if he's another guy that if he comes in this year and has a solid training camp, solid preseason, he's going to be the winner of that linebacker 4 spot. So let's do one more question today, guys. The final question comes from @Cliv_815. He asked, who will replace Marshall Yanda?
To me, there's a bunch of people competing for that spot, and I actually think it's going to be guard by committee. I think Phillips is a rookie, but not really ready to take over a full role. Ben Powers, 1 year under his belt. He'll probably start there to me if Fluker is not able to. And then Bredesen obviously caught the coach's staff's eye. We reached for him a little bit in the draft. Bozeman came in as a rookie and took over a guard role. I think Bredesen could do the same thing, but I really think it's to be a group effort, which as much as we run the ball and rely on our guys up front, I see everyone seeing time and it being a rotational area.
Yeah, the guy for me definitely is Ben Powers. He had 1 year under his belt. I don't know, maybe Oklahoma bias, but I love the guy. He's physical, he's tough, he's strong. He kind of reminds me of like a typical Ravens offensive lineman. I feel like he can come in, he's going to do a good job for us as long as he can stay healthy. I feel like we didn't really address it in the draft, mainly because I feel like they got some faith in Ben Powers. They did draft him in the 4th round last year, so to me, that's going to be my guy.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you on the Ben Powers thing. The Ravens gave him a redshirt year to kind of learn the nuances of this offense because Greg Roman's schemes were really complicated to learn. It's going to be tough for a rookie to come in and learn it. And I think this year, with potentially delayed training camps due to the COVID-19 outbreak, Ben Bredesen and Tyree Phillips, I don't think are going to have as much time to kind of learn the nuances of this offense. And we're going to have Ben Powers already on this team, who's already known this playbook for over a year. He got a year to develop and learn behind Yanda and really get mentored by Yanda. So I feel like he's my guy for that spot too.
Yeah, you talked about a lot of questions coming into this upcoming season revolving around COVID-19 and how much training camp and rookie camps will be available for these players. I think when you look at the roster and going back to the last question, bubble players, people who were in our system beforehand and know the playbook a little better will have the upper hand there.
Yeah, I agree. Just people that have kind of known the system will definitely have an advantage because who knows how much training camp time a lot of these rookies are going to really get to learn. That's why I feel like at position battles too, like for wide receiver 3, for instance, Willie Snead and Devin Duvernay, I give Snead the edge just due to the fact that we don't know how much time these rookies are going to get.
Yeah, I actually thought Snead performed pretty well last season. I think he's one of the best possession receivers on our team, and we extended him, I think, late in the season last year. I can't remember exactly which week, which showed that we liked his productivity and what he brought onto the field. I'm not too concerned about him making the roster. I think he'll see plenty of snaps this season.
Well, guys, I think that's all we got for this week. Thank you to everybody for tuning in. The support on this is going to go a long way to making sure this podcast can grow the way we want it to. We're looking forward to doing this again next Friday. You can find this podcast available to you on all your favorite podcast platforms, including SoundCloud, Apple Podcasts, or Spotify. Once again, make sure to follow me on Instagram at everything_Ravens and also follow the podcast account at Everything Ravens Podcast. Also, make sure to follow my two awesome co-hosts today at Kyrie31 and at Brooks_Lebo, spelled Lebow. I think you guys both did a fantastic job. Another big shout today to our executive producer, Spencer, at Spence Silverstein on Instagram. He's going to do a fantastic job getting this podcast up to running and up to quality for your entertainment. Also, follow our music producer, the guy who created the awesome intro for this podcast, on Instagram at I am Jack Average. He did a fantastic job creating this. Once again, I'm Logan signing off. We'll see you next week. No copyright intended. All content rights go to their respective owners.